People are rioting over the state of Britain, not Southport, says Tory peer. Well, 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 give the man a cigar. I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. Craig McKinley was an MP and he was struck down by sepsis and lost his arms and his legs from the knee and the elbows down, and part of his face as well. And so he has become a disability campaigner. He was a member of Parliament and then said that with all his problems he can't continue into the next election. And it looks like Rishi Sunak decided that he owed him something and gave him a life peerage. So now Craig McKinley is in the House of Lords, where he probably would be able to do a lot more good than he would have done as an MP, because the Lords are more able to be cross-party and not weighed down by party politics as well, and not in the same way subject to party whipping. So yeah, he might do some good. And seeing as he is no longer in the House of Commons, he's also started to talk sense. I've often said most MPs are quite intelligent people. In fact, some of them extremely intelligent people, very talented and very thoughtful. But the party system reduces them all to a mush. When they get to the House of Lords, they start to make sense again, start to be human beings. And it looks like Craig McKinley is one of those. Here, how do I, yeah, okay. So you see this very poor and depressed part of Southport, and it's not been improved by, well, you can see some, how would I put this, street decorations you will see here. Anyway, Mr. McKinley, or Lord McKinley, or whatever he's calling himself now, he said people took part in riots because of the state of the country and not over the killings of 3 girls in Southport. Well, yeah, the killing of 3 girls, of course, was significant. But yes, I reckon he's right. And unfortunately, our Prime Minister doesn't. He just calls them far right and leaves it at that. It's a lot easier than saying, yeah, the country's in a state and we've got to do something about it, because that means they have to do something about it. And all of this is perfectly logical stuff to anyone who's stuck with my channel for a while, or, you know, any of the other channels like Paul Thorpe and Maya Tusi and even the Lotus Eaters, and you know, a whole lot of them, even the New Culture Forum, for instance, and Spectator TV. They're all saying the same thing. So I'm just preaching to the choir here, aren't I? He said those involved in violent disorder are not limited to extremists. That's a statement of the bleeding obvious, isn't it? Then the Telegraph reverts to this organised by the far right, because that's what the Telegraph has been doing all this time, along with the Mail, the Express, the, you know, just you name it. Any newspaper, they're all peddling the same thing about the far right. I have yet to meet anyone from the far right. Mind you, I suppose people from the far right wouldn't associate with people like me anyway. But the 57-year-old said that normal people were attending to voice their dissatisfaction. And normal people, by that he means people, I suppose, because he's a politician and he can't get out of the thought that there are normal and abnormal people. He says that normal people, for you and me, that's people who think, were attending to voice their dissatisfaction with the state of the country. And it's these normal people who are being arrested. I'm sure you must have heard of that woman who took some ice pops to 2 policemen and got arrested. Or the 18-year-old in Ireland who went to see what all the fuss was about and got arrested. and they ended up in jail. Now, the woman who was arrested said she was kept in prison for 13 hours, and then she was driven home she was never sure of what she had been charged. And when she was being driven home, the policeman said to her, "We've got to charge you because we arrested you." That's to protect themselves from being caught up for wrongful arrest. So you can see there's a sort of conspiracy going on here, that the police are covering their tracks and the government is covering its tracks. Now, let's face it, the Conservatives let this situation start. It's not entirely the Labour Party's fault, but they are now ducking out of the opportunity to roll their sleeves up, and get on with it and do something, because it's too difficult. It's just easy to say they're far-right thugs and dismiss them. And they've obviously somehow managed to get the newspapers to come out with the same story. So when I said to the postman, he asked, I said I've been away, I went on the Tommy Robinson rally. You should have seen the look he gave me. And obviously he thinks now I'm some sort of Nazi. I wonder if that's going to have any effect on my post. But he's been getting this story through the BBC. There was nothing I could do to disabuse him of that. Oh, those are the breaks. But if you look at some of the rallies that are going on, there are lots of couples at these rallies that you'd expect to go and see in the Dog and Duck on Friday afternoon. Oh, big surprise to a politician. Huge surprise. There are ordinary people on these rallies. Ordinary, concerned, wage-earning, tax-paying citizens. This is a huge surprise to him. And you can see here how the Westminster bubble got to him as much as to anybody else. A mosque was targeted by a mob following the spread of false rumours online that the suspect was an asylum seeker who'd arrived in Britain last year on a boat. Yeah, and it was an inaccurate story that got up because there was no information. Technically, the reason for no information was because the person who committed the crime was under the age of 18, and you're not allowed to give out names in that situation. And that came from a very good reasons. If a child is a minor and commits a crime, they get a bit more protection from the invasion of the press and all the rest of it than an adult. However, the reason all of these stories were going round was not because of that, but because people know we are not given stories that legally we are allowed to be given. Just a minute, I've remembered something. I'm going to try and find it, so there'll be a cut here. No, sorry, can't find it. But what it was a story on the BBC about a mob of people who went through a town centre trashing things. And it turned out to have been a mob of Muslim militia. And the BBC managed to report it without once mentioning that it was, people of Pakistani heritage, and made it sound like it was the far right that Keir Starmer keeps talking about. I'm really sorry I can't find that. I should have taken a screenshot of it or something. However, and people are accustomed to this sort of prevarication, and so they automatically assume this was another one of those instances. And that's what happens when you lie to people. So, it looks like Lord McKinley, they call him Mr. McKinley here, but if he's in the House of Lords, he's got to be a lord of some sort. He's finally saying that it's not just the far right. It's ordinary people who can see there's something wrong and have no way of rectifying what's wrong because their vote doesn't count anymore. It doesn't count in respect of so much of the country voted for Brexit, and Parliament did its best to stymie that. So many of the people voted for the Conservatives in the 2019... Sorry, cough coming. In the 2019 elections, but it didn't make any difference because the Conservative government didn't do anything. And then people just gave up, and Labour got in on a very low vote, and they are taking ordinary people apart now and calling them far right. Lord McKinley says, we've got the boats and illegal migration, and then you've got the enormous numbers of legal migration, and I'm not proud of it. I've never supported it, and I've been very robustly against all of these vast numbers that have been coming in. Well, that's what he says, but it didn't stop, did it? So instead he could have, for instance, joined the Reform Party instead of sticking with the Conservative Party, who were doing nothing. I've made a very easy connection, he says. We have 9.4 million people in this country who are of working age, who are economically inactive. Surely we've got a pool of workers available domestically to actually fill the jobs that are available. The problem is this. When you have illegals coming in, and you're the sort of business who doesn't mind taking advantage of that, you can take workers in without paying them holiday, sickness benefit, all sorts of pension schemes and all the rest of it, and be subject to the law if you have to sack them or you just want to get rid of them. If they're illegal, you can just get rid of them. And that's the big thing. When British workers take jobs, the company is absolutely held hostage by a lot of very good and very humane employment laws. However, these very good and very humane employment laws actually stop people from employing people as well. They actually discourage you from employing people. And I've used this before. There was an instance, for instance, of a hairdresser. She just started up the business, and a woman in a hijab came to apply for jobs she was advertising. And this poor woman, being honest, said to this employee, or this prospective employee, I'm sorry, I want a different image for my hairdressers, and a woman in a hijab wouldn't fit that profile. Well, it was a bit silly of her to say that, but that woman in the hijab, instead of understanding that this woman had a certain idea, she took her to a tribunal, sued her for thousands, and this woman went out of business, of course. That was the end of her attempt to start up a hairdresser's. And that's because of the very humane and understanding employment laws we have in this country. And I don't see any way of squaring the circle on that. We have 9.4 million people in this country who are of working age and economically inactive because of our humane, mostly because of our humane employment laws. And you know, so what we're doing is we're getting people in Bangladesh and Pakistan and India and places like that to make our stuff for us, where working conditions are terrible and workers die because of unsafe premises, but at least we don't see it here. And then we have people here who are illegal and working in sorts of sweatshops and back alley premises, and as in semi-criminal activities. And again, they're sort of hidden, so they're not subject to the law, and that's why there are 9.4 million British people not in full employment. All right, well, that's at least Mr. McKinley is talking sense. It's a shame that our government isn't doing the same thing, isn't it? All right, till next time. You can help my channel by clicking like, by subscribing, by clicking the notification bell, and by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels are in the description, also links to donation sites, but really the best way you can help me is simply by clicking like. Thank you.